Welcome to Real Talk, brought to you by JLL Vietnam, where we update the latest market trend on Vietnam real estate market. I'm Trang, country head of JLL Vietnam. Vietnam hospitality market has grown significantly in recent years, and we have Jon Cannon, the Senior Vice President of Hotel Asset Management, JLL Vietnam and Thailand, joining us today. Jon, can you make the introduction about yourself to our audience?
Thanks, Trang. Yes, my role is Hotel Asset Management, which forms part of the wider JLL Hospitality and Hotels group. So my main focus is Vietnam and Thailand.
Okay, thanks, Jon. So how has domestic tourism recovered in Vietnam, and what's the outlook through 2030?
I think when we as we said, the numbers earlier about 160 million, that's almost a 15 to 16% like compound interest growth rates that we look at. It's almost a 15% in 5 years, which is well above market. And then when we look at that ratio compared to other markets, even from a GDP investment rate, we're looking about 5.3 to 5.4% of the country's GDP being put into infrastructure, whereas some of the neighboring countries, Thailand is only about 3.2, and then when we're looking to Indonesia, about 2.8. So that investment by the government is really going to fuel this growth and accessibility, because Vietnam's got such a diverse portfolio, or however you want to frame it. You've got the countryside, you've got the hillside, you've got amazing undiscovered natural beauties at the moment. You've got the UNESCO sites in Hoi An. You've got the ASEAN summit coming in Phu Quoc, which is going to then put Phu Quoc, which probably 10 years ago was not a really known destination, will really put that on the map with a real international lens. So the expansion there of the airport will actually then help an island which is struggling with capacity from airlift, which will then just accelerate that. So I think Vietnam's got it's already capturing some of its potential, but it's got a lot more. And you see regionally the drawing away. Some of the other markets are shrinking a little bit, and Vietnam's picking up that shrinkage. So it's a really positive destination. I think the news this year has been really positive in the way that we're bringing the provinces together. So halving the amount of provinces, which then change the regulations, a more consistent experience for travellers across, and we're seeing those policies changing. So there's able to be more of a unified approach rather than probably 92 different opinions. We're now bringing that down to half, which will then just fuel the growth even further.
Yeah, right. Jon, so you already mentioned that the improvement in the infrastructure is really help to supporting for the growth of the hotel and hospitality market. And given the improvement in the infrastructure, it's also created opportunities for the new destination outside of the traditional ones. So from your perspective, are there any specific destination within Vietnam that you see as the most significant domestic tourism growth?
I think that's it's a hard question to answer, because when we talk to a lot of developers, there's a lot of master planning, and it's not just 5 years, it's 10, 20, almost 30 years ahead. So I think when we're looking at opportunities within Vietnam, obviously the main cities, we've already got Ho Chi Minh, we've got Hanoi, we're into destinations like Sapa are now really starting to grow as that infrastructure gets there. You've got your traditional destinations like Da Nang and Hoi An. Phu Quoc's growing. Dalat is really emerging. Then you've got new airports popping in, and like Van Don's got an airport there. You've got Sun Group now having their own airline. So that's going to really connect, obviously domestically, there's a lot of province travel, but then looking forward as these airports grow. So it's not the easiest to say where's the next hotspot, but when we look at the master planning, obviously coastal is always good. People look at those coastal destinations. When we look at Phan Thiet, when we're looking at Vung Tau, like the expansion there of already established, but not quite there yet. But as we see the population growth, obviously they're predicting with the Vietnamese middle class market to grow to 40 million, which is 40% of the population. That's a lot of domestic travel, which is there. So these drive to or short flight to destinations are really going to grow. So it's always a moving target. It's not the easiest to say, but I think when we're looking at people looking at investing into Vietnam, it's not just looking what's hot now. It's looking what's going to be there in the 5-10 years when the government announce If we look in Hanoi, there's a new ring road going around Hanoi. So that's going to drive just outside kind of Hanoi's already kind of pretty tight and you can't grow anymore. So it's that expansion out from there. When we look at Ho Chi Minh, there is a limited supply there. But when we look at District 2, there's a lot of expansion there. District 7 is starting to grow. So I think it's always just looking at what's happening now.
Yeah.
And then for any investors that are looking to come in, it's also partnering with local developers as well, because it's the way to work through I think the paperwork we all know is sometimes a challenge, and there's regulations. So looking at foreign investors partnering with local developers to really move and navigate through the challenges, but also kind of bring that international lens onto the market. Because when we look at what international investors want, sustainability is a big thing. So we're not now talking reducing plastic water bottles in hotels. That was 5 years ago. We're now talking about smart cities. We're looking at energy consumption. We're looking at, because the infrastructure has to match the investment. So where are we getting our water from? Where are we getting our energy from? So green energy is obviously a kind of a big component in there. When foreign investors are looking in, that's their share, and their corporate values have to be there and aligning with that. So I think it's really aligning a lot of technology which we're seeing in other markets, we now need to really bring into the kind of Vietnamese market. I know we were talking with the developer about smart cities and how to really amplify the technology and almost future-proof for the next 20, 30 years, rather than go with today's tech, which then becomes obsolete because the way that technology and the infrastructure is changing so quickly. When we look at data centers coming into markets, we're seeing the challenges there with energy and water. So how do we do this with our I&L teams, with the infrastructure, with warehouses and factories? We've got Apple growing, we've got Samsung. We then need to support that with hotels and tourism to kind of support those markets. So it's a really exciting space. So that's a long answer to a short question of where to invest. But I think it's really looking at the next, not just now, but the next 5 and 10 years as well.
And when you also touch on a very interesting point about the sustainability and smart. From my point of view, is that those two factors actually come together and supporting for each other. And it's critical for the emerging country like Vietnam. We luckily to be able to learn from the other developed market where we're still at the very early stage of the development, and we have the chance to understanding that we need to use our resource more carefully and more efficiently in a way so that we can have more impactful investment and sustainable growth. So it's not just for the hotel, as you mentioned, it's also for the industrial and logistic, and for the country like us where a lot of like FDI investment coming to the country, develop on the land resource and using a lot of water, electricity. That's a very good point that all of the investor from our real estate standpoint, we need to be focused on. Okay, so now next to the very interesting question that I have for you. So if we just read through all the news on the paper recently, we will see that many mention that Vietnam is becoming the competitor and rival of Thailand market. What is your view on that?
Okay. I'm going to be careful because I work in both countries. But I think from our standpoint, I know even within the typo, so obviously I read both sides of the media just to kind of get that viewpoint. But even within the Thai media, there is concern that Vietnam will outstrip Thailand. Thailand has been that powerhouse of tourism for such a long time. And now we're starting to see, I'd say post-recovery, 23, 24 was looking very positive. When I was doing the budgets and forecasts for my hotels for 25, we were still growing. Occupancy was growing. We're growing ADR. 25 has been a bit of a challenging year. We've had the geopolitical issues. We know we've had tariff questions. But then we've had the earthquake which happened in March. We've had recently the skirmish on the border with Cambodia. So that's affected it. And we're seeing that move when I talk to some of my more traditional wholesale agents, they're moving business into Vietnam. Because Thailand was becoming a little bit too expensive. So Vietnam's a cheaper destination to go from a hotel. You're looking at about 15 to 20% cheaper for hotels. So I think and Vietnam's really I think watching what not just Thailand, but other markets have done with their boom in tourism and how the infrastructure's not been able to keep up with that. We're seeing retrospective master planning now for destinations like Phuket. When we look at Bali, the roadways just can't keep up with the infrastructure. So I think Vietnam's been very, I wouldn't say cautious, but just watching that, what has everyone else done? And let's learn from that to kind of really then not make the same mistakes, because it's when you get bottlenecks in certain kind of, let's talk about traffic, trying to get from you've done a long haul flight, you land, and then you've got another 2.5 hours drive to your hotel. It's a long time, and it becomes, it's not an attractive consideration for the traveler. So I think when we look at Vietnam versus a market like Thailand, it's still growing, and it will keep growing as that kind of infrastructure grows, and that kind of awareness. The government are doing some really good work on social media. If we kind of look at the TikTok and Instagram content that's getting put out, there's a lot of government-driven marketing, but there's also a lot of influencer marketing on now that these tier 2 and tier 3 destinations and these unique spaces, that digital generation are really driving the awareness to Vietnam.
Right.
So that's only a good thing. So I think, again, Thailand it's not going to disappear today, but I think it's a market where it kind of is slowing down for that tourism. So, and we will see that pick up in Vietnam as we see our kind of markets like Japan and South Korea now starting to really explore Vietnam. They're really kind of embracing this. If you look at Phuket, it's a very South Korean destination now. So when you've got the manufacturing and infrastructure in the north, it's that name kind of like when you go to Hanoi, you've got welcome to Samsung Hanoi. Right, so you're seeing that kind of that connectivity there. When we look at our kind of Eastern European markets, I think the visa changes over the last few years have been good. More countries are now getting visa accessibility.
Right.
I think it can be expanded more. I come in on my British passport, but I also hold an Australian passport. So there's other countries there which would be a good driver for tourism, because once you remove that barrier to entry and not having to do a visa and a visa on arrival, it's one less, it's the customer journey. So when we look at the booking patterns, you book your hotel, I've got to book a visa. Oh, okay. It's another barrier to entry. So if we can lift some of those barriers to entry on visas, because again, it's another cost. However, that gets factored into maybe more spending country. I think opening up a few more things like that will really help Vietnam grow in its international tourism.
It's fantastic to hear that all the improvement of Vietnam, and touch on the point where for now, even though all the press saying that Vietnam is a growing competitor to Thailand, from my point of view, it's a country having very unique point and attraction to, and they their own way have the right group of the target visitor. And maybe we even like over the chains and the collaboration between the region and the country in the region, we can come up with a new package for the visitor from the other region to come to Vietnam and Thailand together. So it's maybe also another way for the market.
And there is that talk, how far it will go about that ASEAN connectivity where you can travel around a lot easier. There's talks around that, but I think one thing that Vietnam does well is safety. So Thailand has really been hit over the last few years. The Chinese market has stopped coming to Thailand because there's perceived safety challenges. And we've seen that sentiment in the media and also within some polls, whereas Vietnam's a very safe destination. I think it's locally it might maybe kind of, we've got a lot of laws and we've got a lot of police around, but that safety element there really gives that tourist to a new destination. I think that safety and that kind of care factor around does kind of bring that, it's that feeling for the traveler. Okay, it's a safe destination. I can walk around. I can just be safe in a country. I think Thailand's had some challenges recently with things in the north. So I think Vietnam's doing that well at the moment. Given all of the potential opportunities and the shift in the market dynamic, what are the key trends in the hotel market? There's a lot happening. As with hotels all the time, it's a very exciting changes. We've seen, I think, your destinations like Phuket, where we've got hotels with 600, 700, 800 key hotels. But then in kind of tier 2 and tier 3 cities, we're looking more smaller key counts, more unique hotels. I think the traveling trends are really changing now. Like the big hotels are really good for like holidays, you're bringing family, it's got the space there. But I think people are looking for more unique and boutique experiences. So I think the blend of the two really kind of will keep emerging. So when we look at the travelers now, the digital generation and the kind of the Instagram traveler, they're not looking for a big boxy hotel with an all-day dining restaurant and a banquet space and a swim.
Yeah.
Everyone's got those. I think those more unique and really kind of bespoke properties are where that demand's really coming in. And we're seeing that we're able to do that in that kind of tier 2 and tier 3 cities, because we know in the main cities that land cost is so expensive. So when you build a hotel, you've got to get the maximum value you can out of that. So as many rooms as you can, meetings, all of those things there become really important. Tier 2, tier 3 cities, you can do more really kind of higher ADR and also internal capture because the restaurant is really tapped into the local community. We're bringing those local experiences, which the traveler really wants, because that's the experience that no one else has seen. So it's really those experiential stays. When we're looking at sustainability, we talked about it earlier on, the being able to support hotels coming into market, but what are hotels doing around sustainability? The days of, as we said, plastic bottles getting taken out, that's not really there anymore. I think ESG is really where that's a strong component, because for the investor, if you're doing a hotel, the ESG component, are you getting the best energy use? Is your hotel efficient? When we're doing renovations of hotels, we're looking at the M&E. Can we get better efficiencies out of the hotel? Because ultimately that's kind of increases your investment value when your hotel's got delivering better performance, not just on top line, but also within systems. So I think technology's there as well. We've got the AI is very prevalent, how we can incorporate that to make us more efficient, not take away people, because hotels fundamentally are a people-driven business. Yeah. If you have nobody in a hotel from a service side, what's the...
Very cold place to go,
very
right?
cold. People make hotels.
Yes.
I think you can use AI to enhance the customer journey.
Yes.
Enhance the in-room tech, because everybody now... I connect my phone straight to the TV. So the days of the old kind of TVs you can't connect frustrate me. It's, can I charge my 4 or 5 devices that I've got with me easily in a hotel room? So simple technology, taking in the AI elements for just how to interact with a guest and how we can then get those touch points all around the hotel. With obviously second language sometimes being a challenge in our tier 2, tier 3 cities. How can we adapt that? So until our local population kind of come up to speed with English, sometimes there's a challenge. We can use AI for these conversations. So ChatGPT, you can have just one-on-one conversations and it'll just converse between the two. Google Translate's always been there for a while. So I think it's enhancing the service. It's not taking away the people. So that's really where I see. But I think, Vietnam's got a real chance to now kind of get that very diverse portfolio. We're seeing a all-inclusive resort coming into Phu Quoc with the Ennismore Group, for example. So that's a very different proposition. We're seeing the kind of the top 5 big brands, really very strong expansion, not just in tier 1, but tier 2, tier 3 cities. So when we talk to the operators, they're very bullish on Vietnam because there's so much untapped potential to really drive in the brand. So I think it's, finding the balance between the two, which fit the market.
Okay, so sound like the country can offer the wide range of the investment opportunities from the very big complex development to a smaller boutique one, more experienced traveler in tier 2 and tier 3 localities. And then there are also potential upside or improvement in the technology AI side to enhance the traveler experience as well. And then what advice would you give to our investor looking at Vietnam hotel sectors?
I think when we look from an investment side, it's really making sure that it's the master plan is really capturing, because obviously with new markets coming in and new areas, it's really the traditional hotel. Are we looking now more mixed use? Because when we look at, let's take Ho Chi Minh for an example, office cost is very expensive. So do we do mixed use, shopping mall, office, hotel? So really looking at that master planning and really kind of mapping out the next 20 years of what that area is going to be there. When we're looking at the, I think, obviously ESG components. So it's not just don't build it quick and build it fast. Really invest in the structure that's going to be the most efficient that you can do. When you're looking at the consumer trends, what are you looking at there? With the brands, making sure the brands resonate with the markets. Sometimes you end up with the brand which doesn't fit the market sometimes. So it's finding that brand which resonates with the market. But as we said earlier on, there's so much master planning going on. There's new areas coming in. So from an investor side, it's sometimes hedging your bets. Let's looking at that 3 to 5 years. Where should we put the hotel in now? Because hotels do take 3 to 5 years to get built. By the time you acquire the land, get the regulations, your EIA, do your master plan, submit the license, actually build it, you're 5 years away. You're looking now, so looking at what's happening in 5 years. What are the trends that your hotel's going to need? So it's not just building a hotel for now. You're looking 5 years, but then you've got to look another 10 to 15 years after that before you're even looking to do a major renovation. So your hotel journey is 20 years away before it's kind of onto its next cycle. So future-proofing is always, it's hard to predict, but that's where you kind of really engage experts in market who can help you do that and really kind of grow that business to be the most successful it can do.
Yeah, can't agree more with that. And to be honest, I think it's applicable and true for other asset type as well. The master plan is so important in the very first phase, and all of like the thought that we put on that needs to be a little bit more future proof because as you mentioned, the day it's put into operation is typically about 3 to 5 years, depending on the scale of the property. And if you have the right master plan, it can be sustained, resilient over the very long term. And it's also in terms of the operation, it's really supporting for the efficiency of operation. What I experienced is in the past, when most developer doing the master planning, they don't think much about the operation side and the real resident and guests and visitor living in that project. And then when it's come to the next day, where we need the operation team, and then we figured out there's so many factors that it's not fully reflect in the master plan. So we learned that, and with the support from the AI technology, we can like factor that in the master planning very early stage, and it's really helpful.
Because sometimes we forget that operation side. So because the guests now, they don't spend time in hotels. So even the size of hotel rooms are coming down because your guest is not in the room. They don't spend time in the hotel unless it's something really to attract them. So it's how we're looking at hotels, because in like markets like Hanoi, you walk straight out and you're into this foodie heaven. You're traveling around, you're eating. So hotels are really struggling in F&B spaces. So we're seeing the operators change their brand concepts to really kind of factor that in. You always need F&B in hotels because it's people need breakfast, you've got meetings. But how are we then adapting our spaces to a nighttime? Are we outsourcing restaurants to give it to experts to let them run the F&B? Because guests want that outside feel sometimes in their hotels. So it's really just looking at what your market is around the hotel and how we can kind of adapt that to the traveler, because ultimately it's the traveler is going to determine the success of the property. So it's really making sure that the demographic that you're going for and the brand that you're bringing in, or if you're creating your own, is really kind of, that becomes a real critical part of the master planning as well.
Okay, can't agree more. And the last question, what is your outlook about the hotel market in the next 5 to 10 years? What is the major trend going to shape the market here?
I think we touched on a lot of the kind of the trends which are there, but I think the big parts for us is obviously that domestic travel is going to double. So that's a big part. So I think post-COVID, that everyone really now has recognized that the domestic travel, not just within Vietnam, but our counterparts across regional countries and internationally. Domestic travel is still there because costs are quite high still globally. So the cost of living crisis within certain countries are really kind of driving that domestic tourism. So I think within Vietnam, we're still feeling that kind of the cost of living is increasing. So our domestic spend is going to get done internally. So there's a big market there. I think internationally, when we're looking at the infrastructure developments and the ease of accessibility into Vietnam, we're going to see international growth go from about 16, 17 million to around that 40 million, which competes with one of our major competitors, Thailand. So that number's there. When we look at the kind of the new airport that's coming in, it's also master planned, not just to do 30, 40 million, but it's got enough expansion out where it can do up to 150 million. So things like that, it's really just positive to see. When we talk about the provinces coming down and that ease of regulations and kind of the more cohesive thinking across the country, that's going to really kind of impact as well. And then obviously the rise of the tier 2, tier 3 cities. I've been coming to Vietnam for probably coming on 20, 25 years myself.
All right.
And I've seen it grow, but there's still so much more that I've got to explore within Vietnam, which I'm really I'm looking forward to, because there's so much out there that I'm discovering on each trip I make, every time I see a new destination that I want to go to. So for me as well, and not just the industry, it's a really exciting country to be in. And it's a very positive conversation now when we talk to a lot of developers and hotel operators. The last few years have been challenging, but a lot more of the conversations now are very positive. There's a lot more energy from them on, let's get these developments going. Let's keep expanding. So it's positive. So next 5 to 10 years, can't wait to see the growth just keep going.
Thank you, Jon, for sharing the invaluable insight about the market. And I believe that all of our audience here is just like, based on what you just shared, will be more confident on the market, and then looking at the various opportunities the country is offering, from the big complex development to the more boutique experience hospitality project in the tier 2, tier 3, and also the touch on the sustainability and the technologies will help us to differentiate ourselves with the other market in the region. Thanks, Jon. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Trang. It's been great.
Thank you. See you next time.